Dr. Nadolsky, welcome back to the American Glutton podcast. And let me say congratulations on being the first ever medical director at Weight Watchers.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a co-host now.
You are. Like, this is so, and by the way, I feel like with that title, I have elevated myself just by association.
A rising tide floats all boats, right? Is that
I mean, I think so. This is exciting. That's awesome, dude.
Thank you. It's been a fun journey. So I feel like we talk all the time, but it's been a little bit since we chatted last.
Yeah.
I think about maybe like lifting weights and how exercise is medicine type of thing, and then
right.
Oh, and whether obesity is a choice, that, and then in between there, this whole thing happened. So
well, yeah, but also I remember first hearing about some of the kind of medical breakthrough in pharmacology for weight loss from you.
Yeah.
And this was prior to the explosion, prior to like Ozempic being omnipresent in the conversation of weight loss.
Before the songs in the Hollywood.
Yeah. Before any of those
people
got their hands on it and started this wave, you brought it up. And, you know, I got to say, when I heard about it, I was kind of like freaked out. And I was freaked out for a while by it. And then, you know, and even still, it's weird because Ozempic is the omnipresent word, but the drug is semaglutide or semaglutide.
Yeah, right. So it was okay. So yes, Ozempic is the brand name for the type 2 diabetes approved version of semaglutide, however people want to pronounce it. I always say semaglutide. Maybe it's my Midwestern accent. I don't even know. But Wegovy is technically the brand name made for weight management or obesity. But they're the same peptide molecule.
The same peptide molecule. And then there's other ones. There's other peptides. And then I read an article recently where it was like semaglutide attacks one receptor, this other thing attacks two receptors. Then there was a recent conference where they're like, now we have something that attacks three receptors. It's just not FDA approved yet, and we're working on it.
The future is going to be really interesting with these new biological methods of obesity drugs. Yeah, we can get all into it, whatever you want to know.
I want to get into it. I want to run my theory and my concerns by you.
Let's hear it all.
So I think that this is fucking incredible for someone like, if I had not kind of figured out a structure that worked for me and this stuff had appeared 6 years ago, I'm in. I'm going like, okay, I'm a lifelong adherent to this because I've not had success keeping weight off, and I'm going to try this. And I tried most everything else. Yeah. And so I would definitely try this and hope to God it worked for me. I today don't need that. And so my concern becomes this. I've talked to a few people who had issues like mine, who are like, I'm taking Ozempic. And again, I think they were probably taking Wegovy, but they said Ozempic.
Could be. They could have gotten it off label. That's true.
Right. They're taking this stuff and they're like, I'm really happy with it. And those are people who I believe will take it forever. And I understand that. And then the only experience I've had where I actually was physically in contact with somebody who told me they were taking it was somebody who for many years was one of these people that was very concerned that everything they put into their body must be organic and wouldn't eat seed oils, and was constantly doing different fad type diets in order to lose a little bit of weight, and was roller coastering on that.
You just described everybody in Hollywood.
Right. This person happened to live in Hollywood, and then we were around each other. And I knew, and I don't want to out this person at all because I care about
you. It's very general because I could imagine it could be anybody based on what you just described.
And so they're taking. They also said Ozempic, although I suspect it was Wegovy. And they got it through a weight loss clinic in 5-week increments, which already from what I've read, you need 6 to 8 weeks for it to even like load into your body. I don't know that that's true, but I
We
did
can get
read
into
that.
that. I'll be interested. There are compounded versions. We'll get into some of that
Okay.
as
The
well.
the thing I observed by being around this person was that they were eating everything in sight.
Hmm.
And not to excess. However, this person who prior to this on many iterations of their diet was like gluten's bad, grains are bad, is now eating pizza, going for ice cream. And so my initial reaction to this for the majority of people who do fad diets is this will, and I also believe fad diets have increased obesity when you go super low calorie and then you stop the fad diet and you gain more weight, and this becomes this yo-yo cycle. My perception of this person doing it and my fear of all the people that do fad diets is that they're going to throw away their responsibility because they're putting all their responsibility into this drug, and then have over time net more weight to lose.
Did this person have clinical obesity, like, or
No.
it was just kind of like, okay, so that's probably the number one issue, is that these drugs need to be reserved for those with, and instead of just saying obesity, we're saying clinical obesity. The reason for that is because, like, what determines whether obesity is harmful or a disease or anything like that? Is it at what point at body fat percentage of, oh, now it's a disease, oh, now it's not because you're a little bit less? That doesn't even make any sense. So it's the point at, we got to look at how much harm is developing from this adipose tissue and where it's stored, all these different things. So you see a lot of these people who have what I wouldn't say clinical obesity, they just want to lose what I'd call vanity weight.
Right.
And this is where the drug hasn't been studied in these individuals. It might be okay, it might be safe, but like, it hasn't been studied. I wouldn't recommend it. The drug's hard to come by. They're expensive. We don't want to bloat insurances and cause more healthcare dollars to be wasted on people who would get little benefit other than vanity weight loss, versus those who have a much higher risk of issues from their clinical obesity, like heart disease, kidney disease, kidney failure, all these different things, the real end stage things. Those are the people we want to concentrate on. So when people start taking it for vanity weight loss, and I know it's big in Hollywood, hasn't been studied. Are these people going to take this long term? Like, or are they just going to use this and yo-yo the same way they did with fad diets?
Right.
In those, like, in my clinical experience, this has to be studied, by the way, for anybody listening. When I say my clinical experience, I'm talking about anecdotes, what I see, and you have to be very careful with that, because people that come to see me specifically or come to my clinic, my program, they may think a certain way and may be geared towards a certain way. So in my experience, those with clinical obesity, they've been trying diet and exercise for so long, they know what to do. They just simply can't do it, and they need a tool to help them. What people are worried about, and what I think you're worried about, is what you're saying, is that they're going to just take the drug to lose weight, and they'll just eat whatever they want in just smaller quantities. And maybe it's still a positive gain. It's very possible that, like, just the calorie deficit just from the drug and the benefits from the GLP receptor, and we can talk all about that, maybe an overall positive. It's very possible. But in my heart, I truly believe that the quality and your dietary patterns, non-scale, not beyond the calorie deficit. If everything only mattered basically on a calorie deficit and energy balance just by itself, and no quality of diet, dietary patterns, and anything else, then probably the drugs is just, everybody should just take this drug. But I don't believe that. So the worry is that the
But
non
also when you say everybody should take this drug, don't when you stop taking it,
yeah
if you're accustomed to eating pizza 3 times a day and
yeah
you're taking a drug because it makes you full off half a slice of pizza,
very
and then
likely you'll regain the weight.
you stop taking it, and now you're like, well, I eat pizza 3 times a day, and now I need a half a pizza or a whole pizza to get full.
Yeah. So again, that's why it shouldn't be used in these individuals. It hasn't been studied that way. I do believe, I mean, we have a lot of data showing dietary patterns do matter beyond energy balance, beyond body composition. So the Hollywood folks, and it's not just Hollywood, it's a lot of people just want to take this drug because of vanity reasons. So that's the reason it needs to be prescribed in the clinically indicated correct person, the person with clinical obesity or type 2 diabetes, mind you, where it's also approved with a different brand name. So that's, and yes, you have to go on it thinking you're probably going to be on this long term, likely. Although we can get into that because I do have patients that come off of it, not necessarily because they wanted to, because insurances are changing, shortages we're seeing. And then some people do want to, they want to see if they can wean off of it. We can go all into that if you want to, but I
Yeah.
agree with you. I don't think it should be used for vanity weight loss. It should not.
Yeah, I mean, look, I even saw a post Dr. Mike made, and he was like, "This stuff is great for a cut. It makes it so much easier." And my, I understand his perspective. Like the guy's on a diet half the year, and this makes that easier. From my perspective, where it's like I'm communicating with people who are having difficulty dieting. Mike, you're an expert and you have no difficulty. You're successful at every diet you do. There's no problem with you dieting. So, okay, if you do something that makes it easier, but for the folks who want to lose 20 pounds and are having a hard time, if they're going to do this for 3 or 6 months and then come off of it, are they, and not change anything, are they going to have success? Like cocaine was also great at numbing out the nasal cavity. Is that the primary function of cocaine? No, people suck it up because it feels good.
Yeah, it's funny. I only experienced that once, not using cocaine, mind you, anybody listening. In residency, we had a person with a nosebleed, and my attending doctor at the time was like, we're gonna go get some cocaine. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a
And we went to
pharmaceutical drug.
we went to the pharmacy and we did, and anyway, it was so interesting to me. I was like, I didn't think this was something we did. Anyway, yeah. So you're right though. Like dietary patterns matter. These drugs are meant to be the way they've been studied is to treat a chronic disease in obesity and type 2 diabetes. Hasn't been studied in for vanity weight loss for short periods of time. That's not how they're meant to be taken. We don't know what happens. It's so here's my hypothesis about how these drugs work, and I post about this all the time. These drugs facilitate behavior change. They should. Having said that, it doesn't mean that people out there won't, quote unquote, abuse it.
Right.
Meaning, all right, I just need to lose some weight. I'm going to go get this drug. However, from my experience, the people that come to me who've been struggling with their clinical obesity for so long, that's not how they view it. They view it as like, I know what I need to do. My body's fighting me hard. Give me a tool to make it easier to do it. That's what I see again. But I do, you see Reddit posts, you see all sorts of posts about things like that out there. And obviously you're seeing it too,
Yeah.
in your
And
realm.
and I thoroughly understand that. Like I was that for 15 years or even more, my whole childhood
Yeah.
had this been around. It was, my childhood I struggled against because a lot of it was being imposed on me and I wasn't really a participant. But once I became interested, it's a fucking grind, dude. Like, and that just makes sense. Like, I understand knowing what to do and not being capable of doing it or getting a little bit of time under my belt doing it and then being so exhausted by the effort to do it that it's like the rest of my life falls apart. And then because of that, I'm like, where's the balance here? It's not worth it. I'm not doing this anymore. um
Yeah, you're
that it,
fighting hard, right?
you're
That
fighting
you're
hard.
fighting hard.
And kind of like the reason that the way I finally figured out dieting worked for me is it was such a mild deficit that it didn't spin my life into a tailspin. And then maintenance really allowed me to chill out and like come to a point of sanity again where I'm not just having food dreams every night. and like allowing it to take time. But I understand if a person's not even putting that together for themselves, if that is too much trouble, I get it. I get this drug.
Yeah, so think like I'm sure you've experienced this. We call it food noise. That's kind of how people describe it. This unrelenting, ruthless thought about food. When are you going to eat next? You just ate. You're pretty full, but when is your next meal? Can you have more dessert? Can you have another serving? You've described this before in the podcast that we've done.
Yeah.
Um, some of this is, habituary, behavioral. A lot of it is also biological. So with you figuring out how to get into maintenance and just be okay there, you're obviously giving yourself enough energy to tell your brain to calm down. Other people describe this, they're at a maintenance level and they just describe the constant food noise of just like, when am I going to eat next? I want dessert. I shouldn't, because I'm full. I shouldn't want another helping of whatever I just ate. I just ate a huge thing of vegetables and lean protein and whatever else. And they can't stop thinking about food. The drug, they didn't even notice this until they start the medicine. And I know you saw the clip that I did with Bill Maher and Joe Rogan. Bill Maher made a comment about scientists don't even know how this drug works. It's
Right.
like, well, that's not true. It's not like we just take this medicine and people poof just start losing weight. They do these the bench research where they look at mice and then they look at all sorts of things, and then they study in humans obviously, but they see the receptors of where these drugs hit the GLP-1 receptor. So glucagon like peptide 1, it's got a very interesting story. It basically it's an incretin. So these hormones come from our intestine, but they didn't know that back in the 50s or so. They injected glucose into veins and they made people drink sugar, glucose. And intuitively, I would think that your insulin would go higher with injecting it. Gets straight into your blood, goes straight to your pancreas. But they found that the insulin goes higher when you drink it.
Really?
And yeah, so they called it the incretin effect, the intestinal secretion of insulin, incretin. And it wasn't until the 80s or so, late 80s, where they found out specifically the types of incretins, one of them being GLP-1,
Okay, so
glucagon
wait,
like peptide
I'm
1.
sorry. I just want to go back for 1 second.
Yeah.
So, in order to uptake the sugar, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. In order for the sugar to get into the cells, you require insulin, and that
Yeah.
insulin is produced when the sugar passes through your digestive tract. If you
Well, it gets sensed by your pancreas in the blood. The difference with drinking it is that there was something about they just called it the incretin effect. They didn't know there was something going on to where they drank it and their insulin was going higher.
Right.
So there's something about ingesting it, drinking it versus just putting it straight into your blood. You still had you have an insulin response putting it into your blood because your pancreas does still sense the glucose, but there was something about drinking it, something in your intestines that made your insulin go even higher. And that's what they called this incretin or
Okay.
intestinal secretion of insulin. They didn't know. And then they didn't find out to, oh, there are these hormones that are released by the intestines. And it's just a fascinating story because like this, they didn't know that this hormone from our gut existed till the 80s, and then they found ways. This whole thing, these Gila monsters, these little lizards, they found that it was similar to our own GLP-1. And then there's this whole story of big pharma finally figuring out. It took them a while. There's some really cool YouTube videos about the scientists involved with this. It was fascinating to watch because I was only in med school right when the first one was basically came out called Byetta exenatide, that was based off of this Gila monster, this little lizard saliva. And
What,
that
they developed the drug out of its saliva?
they were like, what, this guy John Enge, and it was a really cool story. But basically they're like, wow, people are getting pancreatitis when this this Gila monster bites people, this venomous stuff. And then they found, oh yeah, there's something in the saliva. And then it's like, oh wow, it looks like uh, GLP-1, similar to our own endogenous or human-based GLP-1. The problem with our own human GLP-1, it gets broken down within minutes.
Right.
They needed to find a way to make it last a little bit longer in the body. And through the years, though, first they had this Gila Monster saliva and started making it based off of that. And then through the years, they found ways to change the peptide to where our bodies don't break it down as easily. So first it was this Byetta or exenatide, twice a day injection. And it was, decently effective, but twice a day injection, you're already taking insulin maybe a few times a day, but it's a non-insulin, actually helps people lose weight as opposed to gain weight with insulin. Then they found a way to make it once a day. This is liraglutide. The first one was called Victoza. That was Novo Nordisk. That's the one you probably people hear. But that was Victoza. Then they modulated it a little bit more, and they found a way to make it a week long. There was something called Trulicity or dulaglutide, and then they made the exenatide a week long. It's called Bydureon. Not that great, but it was okay at the
I
time.
remember hearing about Trulicity. They had a good
Yeah.
marketing campaign.
Yeah, so Trulicity is one that was pretty good. Once, it's a week long injection.
But this was all towards type 2 diabetes.
It was towards type 2 diabetes. So 2005, 2006, Byetta comes out, whatever it was. A few years later, Victoza, liraglutide, the once a day comes out. Then a few years later, this Trulicity, dulaglutide comes out. Saxenda, though, which is liraglutide, the same as Victoza, they studied it for specifically obesity. Now, people are sitting here going like, these GLP-1s, they're lowering blood sugar. Wouldn't it hurt people in those without type 2 diabetes and make their blood sugars go too low? It's called glucose dependent, meaning your glucose has to be high in order to make this drug lower your blood sugar. So if you have normal blood sugars, it shouldn't lower it anymore. It's glucose dependent as opposed to independent, where it's just making it lower regardless. Like if you took insulin,
right,
your blood sugars go low. This will only make your blood sugars go low once it hits higher thresholds. Pretty cool. So they developed liraglutide into a higher dose. So Victoza, for anybody listening, liraglutide, that was made for type 2 diabetes. I think it was 2009, if I'm remembering correctly, for type 2 diabetes. They cranked up the dose to 3 milligrams, and it was like 2014-ish when they released Saxenda, which is the same molecule, just higher dose. That one was made for specifically obesity. And that was the first GLP-1 drug made for weight management or obesity, 2014. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It was a once a day injection. You get around 8% or so total body weight loss. Now, for some people, listening, if let's say you're 200 pounds, 10% of your weight is 20 pounds. 8% or so is 16 pounds. Doesn't sound that great, but like, hey, if it can keep that weight off and people start getting health benefits around that 5% or so total body weight loss, then maybe it is worth it.
And isn't that a big thing? Like 5% weight loss is a
5%.
boom to health.
The big jump is when you hit 10%, because that's where you start seeing real differences in liver fat, sleep apnea, those types of changes. 10% is the big jump. 5% is where you see blood sugar improvements, blood pressure, triglyceride improvements, some knee pain, maybe improvement. But 10%, now we're starting to talk about all sorts of extra, like not just like metabolic changes, but like weight, just having too much weight. So this is where it gets cool, because then Novo Nordisk, they had Saxenda or liraglutide. Then they found this new one called Semaglutide. What is it, 2016 or 17? It came out as Ozempic. It wasn't big back then. It was made for type 2 diabetes. People weren't taking this for weight loss, but like those in the obesity.
I didn't hear about it back then.
No, nobody heard about this. But in the obesity community, we're all like, ooh, because we knew it was being studied for obesity at the same time. And this stuff is obviously, I mean, you hear about it all the time. Ozempic, it was powerful, but it only went up to 1 milligram at the time. Still pretty good, though. Eventually, 2021, so like 4 years later, they cranked the dose up from, instead of 1 milligram, it's 2.4 milligrams. And this is where the big trial came out, and this is where everybody started going pretty crazy about it. 2021, Wegovy, semaglutide, 2.4 milligrams, around a 15% or so average total body weight loss. So Saxenda, 7 or 8% or whatever it was, we pretty much doubled it. And so you get around that, that 10%, you start getting more, but 15% average. And you can even look at like something called the responses. Some people are getting 20, 25, even 30%, individuals. And there are people that don't respond, by the way. So I don't want to say it's a miracle for everyone. There are some people like, I didn't lose a pound on this stuff. There are people that don't respond, but like on average, 15%. So we're starting to see like, hey, this is they call it a game changer. Like this is changing the game. There is this gap between these older drugs that we have and diet and exercise. So diet and exercise on average, when you look at a total population, obviously you're in the minority. You lost how much? I can never remember how much weight you've.
Nearly 300 pounds, 280, 285.
Okay, and so you've lost, I don't know how much percent of your body weight over the time, and have kept it off for now.
50%.
So
50%.
50% over the course of however many years now, 4 years, whatever.
No, I didn't weigh that much 4 or 5 years ago. This is over the course of 20 years. I weighed 550 22 years ago. And
Okay.
so, but I went from 400 plus pounds to 270 pounds in the last. So that's only 130 pounds.
Only 100. It's over 30% of, right.
Right.
If I'm trying to do this quickly in my head. But that's like, you don't hear about, like, so average diet and exercise, somewhere around 6 to 7%, like over the course of a year, and over each year that starts dropping a total average body weight loss. So we're talking about a drug that triples like diet and exercise, uh, and they're keeping it off over the course of a year. And then they have another study that shows even over the course of 2 years, they've kept it pretty much the same amount off. Big time difference. And where you see at the higher end, you see bariatric surgery. It's 25, 30% or a little bit more. So now we have this drug in the middle that's like, holy cow, we finally have a drug that's like, either diet and exercise, take some of these older drugs, or you go ahead and get bariatric surgery. Now we have drugs that are like, oh no, we're starting to bridge that gap in between in between these two. So it was a big game changer. And then, this new drug, Manjaro, this is the one you're talking about, where it hits two different uh, um, receptors, GLP-1 and something called GIP. It's another incretin that's in our body. That drug gets around 21, and now maybe if you even take it longer, maybe more up to like 25% total body weight loss on average. So, I mean, just incredible drugs. Before I go further, people are probably listening going, this guy is a big pharma shill. He
Well,
is
you're a
getting paid.
doctor. Nobody's paying. All right. Well, I hope.
No, well, no. So no, I think it's important because there are people, I'm not going to name names. There are people out there that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for consulting and doing all sorts of stuff for big pharma. I don't take any money. You can look it up. It looks like maybe every other year I get like $30 because I go out for a lunch and talk with like the medical liaisons about like some of the new studies coming out. But like, I don't take money on purpose. I've been offered, because once I start taking money, it's like, this guy's a shill. I'm not listening to him. So I think it's important to know. I love these drugs, but at the same time, I don't take money because I don't want that to get my opinion to be tainted by that. So I'll just throw that out there.
Well, okay. I mean, listen, in your defense, you never seemed like a shill to me. You're a lipid specialist. You are a weight loss doctor, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what you've been the entire time I've known you. And I've known you
Yes.
for quite a few years or a bunch
Yeah.
of years.
Yeah.
And so, like, my perception of you is like, I could picture you in your practice working for many years with maybe the kind of shittier drugs you have at your disposal, but like
Yeah.
you've always preached like moderation, diet, the benefits of exercise, and I haven't heard you stop doing that. But
Right.
and I want to ask you anecdotally, in your practice, are the people you're seeing having the best results employing both methods?
Yes. So this is the big deal. So like the drug, if if you put someone on intensive behavioral therapy versus just someone who just takes the drug and gets kind of some behavioral therapy, the average weight loss actually ends up being similar. Now, before people say like, well, then what's the point? There's a there's a difference in shape, and you know this because you sent me your pictures, and we've talked about this before, where you just, I don't know what you're eating when you did all the biking and all this stuff. I can't remember the way you were eating back then, but
I was eating only foods I could eat while riding the bike.
that's an amazing diet.
Yeah.
There's a difference in quality, and this has to be studied. I want to make sure everybody knows this, because otherwise they're just gonna be like, this guy's just making up stuff without data. This has to be studied. But again, you asked me what in my clinical experience, there's a difference in how people function and how their shape is, and what they're eating when they really just use the drug as a facilitator for behavior change. Opposite of what you said in the beginning of the podcast, where people are just taking this and eating whatever they want. When people use the drug to just, they know they want to exercise, but they're in pain, and they're in pain because they have too much weight, and then also because there's a lot of what they call this food noise, that the food noise clouds their whole brain and thinking into like all they think about is food. They don't have time to even exercise because they're thinking about food. And if they do exercise, they get frustrated because they're not losing weight from the exercise, because exercise isn't amazing for weight loss by itself. So when my experience is that these patients, they're like, I want to get into weightlifting, I want to get into exercise, I want to start eating more vegetables and lean proteins and things like that. I need something to basically shut this noise out in my head. We have to do studies. We have to do body composition studies. We have to look at the quality of diet. And there's ways to do that with rigorous questionnaires and all sorts of stuff to go like, is this person really eating better, or are they just eating whatever they want and still losing weight? And then cardiorespiratory fitness, strength, all these different other non-scale markers. If you look at the scale, you're not going to see a huge difference. They've done these studies in the past. I think we need to look at different outcomes.
Well, like, okay,
Yeah.
when you think about Peter Attia's anecdotal evidence or anecdotal stories on this, and he talks about how they gained body fat percentage, I understand that, because that's like, if you have somebody that just goes super low calorie and isn't prioritizing protein, isn't getting any resistance training, you can do that. You can lose 40% muscle mass while you're losing fat and wind up with that kind of shift where you lose 20-30 pounds and your body fat percentage increases. If you take this and you prioritize protein and you prioritize resistance training, I would think you would mitigate that to some degree. I think you're always at risk of losing some lean tissue, but you would lessen it.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. He went on the Megyn Kelly show I believe it was Megyn Kelly. It was something on late TV, and I got sent this a bunch of times, and I was like, oh, come on. Please don't use this anecdote, because like, if I took the drug, me specifically,
That
and
has zero fat to lose.
yeah, like if I took the drug, I could imagine me withering. I could just imagine it, because I have to try hard. Like, people are listening, going, I'm trying to lose weight. This guy's trying to maintain his weight. My body, and this gets into the genetics, my body wants to be thinner. I have to eat. Like, if I'm not careful, and if I start doing less volume, and if I start just doing what my body naturally wants, which is to eat a lot less, I notice a body composition shift that's unfavorable. So this medicine has to be used. This goes back to using in the correctly indicated, clinical obesity patient who has more benefit than risk of taking it. If you use it for vanity weight loss, and then you get away from those things that are important, like resistance training, I could imagine an unfavorable shift when they look at it in those with clinical obesity. When you have more weight to lose, more fat to lose, more adipose, a ton of adipose, you could starve yourself and you're going to lose mostly adipose. That's just how it works. The leaner you are, the more muscle you'll lose when going into a calorie deficit.
No
So
matter what.
yeah. So yeah, so I hate the heck when he said that I was like, man, I could find anecdotes of like, because he's a big statin guy. I believe strongly in statins, but I have anecdotes of people going on statins and having all sorts of issues, but we don't talk about those because they're anecdotes. And then when you look at the aggregate of data, they're overall very beneficial. Anyway, that's an aside. It's
Well,
just
no, but the thing I was frustrated with his story simply because where'd the person start? What was
yeah,
their weight?
nobody knows.
If they weighed 350, 400 pounds and lost 30 pounds and somehow gained body fat
That's
percentage, I
not
would be
possible.
shocked. Right.
It's not possible.
If they weighed 200 pounds and lost 20 pounds, maybe we're in the universe where, like,
Yeah,
okay, I get it.
yeah,
If they didn't prioritize protein, but he didn't tell us that.
no,
And so it was kind of like I'm in my head doing math and
yeah,
picturing different body types and going, who was doing it? What did the
yes.
person look like?
It's very important to prescribe these medicines to the correct patient. That's exactly what I keep saying. Don't I see these doctors out there, giving it to their patients for vanity weight loss purposes. I'm like, please don't do that. We're supposed to be doing no harm. We don't know the studies in leaner individuals where, you know, they just they just want to lose some weight to fit into whatever clothes, pants, or anything else. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know that patient, but like I will say, they've done studies. They use subgroup analysis. So the big, huge step one trial, that was the first one that came out for Wegovy, the semaglutide 2.4 milligrams. They do these subgroup analyses, and they did DEXAs on like 100 of these individuals, and they did have a higher 38% was lean mass loss, and that is higher than what we usually expect, somewhere in the 20 to 30 range. That's usually what you expect. So 38%. Now, the thing is, I had a guy, Grant Tinsley, in here. I'm not a DEXA expert, but I know, how to do body composition. Lean mass loss doesn't necessarily mean muscle loss.
No, it could be
It
water too.
could be fluid.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed, and this is really interesting. So a lot of my patients, the thing is, again, this is anecdotal. I also, people coming to me are interested in strength training, and the people that go and get body composition done, they're probably more into their body composition than people that don't get their body. This is the reason why we need to do what's called a randomized controlled trial, where everybody gets it no matter what, and then we give them an experiment to see if there are changes. But let's just go with my clinical experience. People that get their body composition done, they're very interested in it. Some lose in that 25% to 30% range of lean mass, it shows, but they're stronger. And so, and they're like, no, I've never seen shape in my arms before, and all these different things. So I'm like, okay, we need to do studies. And this is where I'm trying to develop some of these studies in the background. We need to get some of these true body composition experts, and they got to measure actual muscle, not just lean body mass loss, because you don't know what the lean mass is. It could just be fluid. I don't know what's going on. They they did do these the same subgroup analyses. So that was semaglutide, upper 30% lean mass loss, which is like, oh, what's going on? They did the same thing in tirzepatide. That's the new one, Mounjaro. Who knows what they're going to call the obesity version of it? It's not approved for obesity yet, but people are using it because it's been studied, and they're using it off label. This drug, again, gets 25% on average total body weight loss. Their lean mass loss in the subgroup analyses was more like the low 20s. So a drug that's more powerful in total overall weight loss had less lean mass loss. I don't know. There need to be randomized trials going like, okay, did they actually look at the muscle? Did they, there's all sorts of things there. So I'm not convinced there's anything about these drugs that are specifically catabolic. I think it's possible that people aren't even drinking. Like, it's possible there are fluid shift. People sometimes get side effects, and we should talk about side effects because they're like, you're talking about the benefits all the time. You farm a shill. I'm like, I don't take money, but we should talk about some of the side effects and those things in a second, because like, I think it's important to know that drugs that have good effects can also have unwanted effects, what
Well,
people
yeah,
usually
but
call side effects.
we could get into statin side effects too. It
Yeah,
wouldn't make you dislike them.
correct. So, but this drug is this newer drug, tirzepatide, hits two receptors. Whether it has anything to do with this GIP or not, it's a big debate. There's lots of papers on it. They're looking at it could be just a more powerful GLP-1, the component. It could be the GIP helps the GLP-1. It doesn't really matter. This new drug, tirzepatide, more weight loss on average, and seems to be less lean mass loss. I don't think there's anything anabolic about the GIP or anything else about it. I think it's the methodology. I could be wrong though. Could totally be wrong on this. but there, despite more weight loss, there's less lean mass loss and around what we'd expect, the lower to mid 20%. Um, but what I'm seeing clinically is that those who prioritize protein, prioritize strength training, very minimal lean mass loss, somewhere in the 10 to at most 20%. Again, there was one person, there was a follower, not a patient, sent me their DEXA. I'm like, oh, it was like a 30% lean mass loss. And they were so much stronger and had more shape in their body. So I'm like, I don't know, like, who cares if they're more functional and stronger at this point? Then what's the difference? But
Yeah, I love DEXA scans. I haven't had one in a while because I moved and like to a whole different state, and like I don't have
I'm
my.
surprised you don't have a DEXA in your house.
Well, listen, there was years ago a little office like a mile away from the gym I would go to, and the guy was trying to sell his DEXA machine for, and I couldn't afford it to
What,
put it, but
40 grand or something like that,
I
probably.
think it was 50. And me and Nick
Yeah,
Cassavetes almost went split it. We were literally talking about it, but you could just pop into this guy's office and get a DEXA scan,
that's awesome.
for $50.
Yeah.
And I did all kinds of stuff. Like I did a full-blown water cut and got a DEXA scan.
Oh
And
yeah, what'd you show? I'd love to hear about it.
when I did that, my body fat percentage went up.
Yeah, see, there you go.
And I actually weighed less,
Yep.
and then like, and it freaked me out to no end.
Yes.
And so when I was fully hydrated and weighed more, I had 222 pounds of lean tissue, and it
There
would
you
go
go.
down to like 215 when I
Uh,
was depleted of water.
Very important. So everybody listening, that you just heard the host of this talk about his experience with this. This is why anecdotes, you got to be careful. I don't know the methodology of how they did the semaglutide. Is it possible they were doing it uh not at the same time? You have to do it the same. It has to be very standardized. The other thing I will say, semaglutide may have more what we call side effects, gastrointestinal side effects, maybe a slightly more than tirzepatide. It's we have to, again, do head-to-head trials and look at all this stuff. So imagine you're nauseous, you have a lot of nausea, and you don't drink as much or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
imagine
no,
imagine
I don't
something
know.
like that.
I will say, like, over, because I did these for years. This guy couldn't move his DEXA scan for years.
Mhm.
And I noticed before I got onto the program I'm on now, when I was doing keto, which has a lot of protein in it, and I was resistance training, over like a year and a half period, I lost on average 40% lean tissue,
Oh, that's interesting.
because the only way I could lose weight doing that anymore was to always be hungry. So I just
Yeah.
wasn't eating a lot. Um, that's a weird thing, but like, yeah, I think these things are important over long periods, and then you should make sure, like, if you're doing them at 8 a.m. and you've had, make sure you're drinking the same amount of water, and all that stuff will play tricks on the
Yeah.
DEXA machine.
Stay tuned. We're going to be doing these studies. So I really appreciate that I'm part of Weight Watchers now. For anybody listening, is helped start this program called Sequence. Within about a year or so, Weight Watchers acquired us. They have a whole scientific team, and they're really into science. And I didn't even know much about it until they bought us. I was like, oh, these are like some of the biggest scientists in the field. I didn't know that they're involved. And we're looking into this. I'm like, okay, we need to look at body composition. We need to look at this and this, and we're going to start doing these. So stay tuned in the next year or so, because we're going to be looking at this, because I do think it's important. I don't want to just go, it's nothing. No, I do think it's important to know. I do think that the things that we know that are helpful, resistance training, adequate protein, are going to be important for mitigating this lean mass loss. I also think it's important. We need to not be so myopic to look at just lean mass. We need to look at muscle. We need to look at function, the quality of the muscle, all sorts of different things. If you're getting stronger and you're in a better quality of life and all sorts of things, if it's a little bit more change on a DEXA, who cares? So we got to know why we're looking at certain things and what the outcome is.
I have a question, and I just, again, it would only be anecdotal, and it's only based on me hearing this data and then observing exactly one person who I was told was taking this stuff. sometimes when I have a stomach ache, the last thing I want to eat is a chicken breast. Rice
Yeah.
sounds good, bread sounds good, because it seems soothing. A banana seems soothing. Is it possible that whatever stomach distress comes with semaglutide could just steer you away from protein?
Yeah, so that's it's great. God, that's it's great. You didn't even take the drug, but you intuitively are asking some of the questions we're asking. It needs to be studied. I'm so lucky to have like a team of amazing dietitians to where like they work with the patient closely to go like, okay, how much protein are you eating? Oh, you're not eating much. So
Right.
I think there may be something to what you're saying. I don't know. This needs to be studied. They need to go like, okay, let's look at just like giving people the drug who are it's clinically indicated, mind you, and let's just look at the quality of diet. Let's see what changes. Is it possible their percentage of protein actually goes down, or are they, or what? And then if we can tell them, hey, let's find ways to make protein more appetizing to you, because I do think, yeah, if you're not feeling so well, at least. So let me get into some of the side effects. The nausea, this stuff happens at the beginning of when you take it, and every time you go up in the dose, not every time, some people tolerate it just fine. For most people, it's mild to moderate. Minority of time, it's moderate to severe. The last person, those people are going to not want I don't want a chicken breast
No,
when I'm not feeling well. I
no.
want like easy to eat carbs.
Yeah.
Like, so I think there's possibly something to that. It has to do with the digestion as well. Over time, the nausea should resolve. If it doesn't resolve, obviously your quality of life, I don't know, is it worth staying nauseous all the time despite less weight? So over time, most people, it will resolve. And the cause of the weight loss isn't from the nausea. Over time, the satiety still stays while the nausea resolves. Now, having said that, there's, those beginning parts of weight loss are very important, because if you're losing weight mostly in the beginning, and if you're not getting enough protein, it's because you're not feeling well enough. Those are crucial periods of time to where that's why our dietitians are great. They jump in when we have side effects with patients. We'll be like, get in with this patient. They're losing weight too quickly. Let's not go up in their dose. Let's settle things down and get them on track. So I do think there's something to that. Um, and that the nausea is the most common side effect we see. So it's not just it's not a free ticket or free lunch or whatever anybody wants to say. These drugs can have some nausea. Constipation we see sometimes too, pretty easy to resolve. More water, sometimes fiber supplementation, try to get them walking a lot, more fiber in their diet, obviously, fruits, lentils, whatever. Some people get diarrhea. It's not as common as the first two. Some people get reflux. Um, Rarely we do see, because people lose weight so quickly, you can get gallbladder disease. You develop gallstones based on the changing of the composition of your bile. So that can start creating gallstones. There may be something with the drug changing the way the gallbladder functions, which may also increase the risk of gallstones. It's rare, but it's something that people should be aware of. Um, but most commonly is nausea, and it can be minimized with lifestyle changes, what people eat. And then sometimes we have to give medicine to combat the nausea. But that's also important why you got to have a clinician that just doesn't go like, oh, all right, let's just keep cranking up your dose despite you wanting to vomit all the time. That's probably not good practice. So
Right.
throwing that out there.
Look, I think I loved opiates. I loved them. Opiates gave me energy. They put a pep in my step. They gave me a personality. They made me feel confident. Like there was no part of taking opiates that ever had a negative thing. Most people I talk to get nauseous when they take opiates. So
Me,
I,
I
I
get
think
nauseous. Yeah.
right. I think like with any drug, none of this shit is going to work exactly the same on everyone. I mean, you could even look at like sicknesses. COVID, I never got a cold at all.
Yeah.
I couldn't smell. That seems to be fairly frequent. Um, and I felt like shit, and but like all of this stuff is going to affect people differently. The point
Yeah.
is that with morbidly obese people, they have an average weight loss that is helpful, that is beneficial. That's kind of the point. My concern again, is less with those people than it is with like people I know in Hollywood who are going to use this drug to lose 10 or 15 pounds and then gain 20. That's
Yeah.
my concern.
Not mine too. I strongly, and again, I strongly recommend those people think about this differently. I think that's where I'm always like, does this person even need to lose weight? Like, come on, should they intentionally try to lose weight? Maybe we should just focus on their fitness. But it's really hard to get people to stop focusing on the number on the scale and start focus. Like, if you focus on the number on the scale, you wouldn't be happy right now. You're freaking
No.
jacked now, despite being heavier than what you were when you're cycling. So, like, if we can implant whatever your mindset is into most people, that would probably be a great thing to do.
Yeah, but no, but like even me, when I have done it like twice or maybe three times, yeah, three times in the last 5 years, like a proper cut down to single digit body fat percentages on a DEXA scan. And then I get to this number 255, and I'm like, fuck, this is it. This is all the abs are visible. There's
Yeah.
veins in my abdomen. And then it's just life sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just miserable to try to maintain that. And so then I get back up to where I am now, and I'm like, I need to lose 20 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm fat, you know,
So yeah,
and
you start, maybe not the number on the scale, but the body composition.
yeah,
Yeah. So that is tough. So you start focusing on something else a little bit too. That, I mean, this is where you start just trying to convince people, like, hey, the misery of trying to maintain, if it's a number on the scale, one thing, or if you switch them to a body composition mindset, but then they start focusing on what they looked at that, like in your case, the body composition. Hey, you had some rippling abs, but you're kind of miserable right now.
right.
Like,
And yeah, no, and for me, like I've just had to get okay with like that's not the life I want to live. Like I you know, I know that's within reach. It's really hard, but I know that's within reach. And like I'm just happier day to day like this. And like this weight is so easily managed for me. Like
yeah,
the food noise is not omnipresent. Even when I go out of the country, I'll take food on the airplane with me, but I'm not landing and concerned like in Rome. Like we got to go to the grocery store because I can't eat out. You know
yeah,
that's no longer the case.
that's great. You have a very good relationship with food right now. It sounds like, compared to what it used to be,
Yeah.
and I think you understand the balance between, body composition, where you want to be, like where you'd love to be, versus where you feel happy and still okay with where you are. It sounds like it's I think we all kind of struggle with that a little bit once we get into this kind of uh bodybuilding type of body composition mindset. But like,
Right. But it's this 20 pounds that I don't even know that like for me, the idea of like, well, should I do Ozempic to lose this 20 pounds because it will be easier and maybe I'll maintain it? I just don't think I would. And then I think like if there are those side effects where I'm suddenly going to be have an adverse effect to eating protein, then I'm going to be wasting lean tissue. Like to me, it's not worth it for those 20 pounds. I understand if you have 100, 200 pounds to lose. I completely get it. But I also think like if I for 20 pounds, what happens when I go off of it? Or am I just then taking it for the rest of my
yeah,
life? You know?
yeah, and we don't know the answers to that, but I think, like, if you're not my patient, unless you want to be, we could sign you up to be my. But like, I'm just thinking about this from the outside, looking at you and what you've done. I probably, unless you were telling me I'm miserable, the food noise is miserable, and I'm fighting tooth and nail to keep me to where I am. And if I gain more weight, I will start developing hypertension, hyperlipidemia, pre-diabetes. My liver won't be able to take it because it'll start getting fatty, all these different little things. Then I'd go, hey, maybe we should consider this. Um, but you're not there clinically. I would say you're not someone I would use this medicine in, unless
Right.
you were saying I have had patients, they've lost 200 or 100 to 200 pounds over the course of 5 years, and they've kept it off. I feel like a dozen of these patients. Some of them are fine, and some of them are starting to reach out. Like, I'm on a spiral. Like I am doing everything I can. For some reason, the food noise is stronger and stronger and stronger. And in those patients, I give them a little low dose and they're fine. Like, oh, now I can relax a little bit, and not think about it. But you're not, it doesn't, I mean, I could be wrong. It doesn't sound like you're at that stage. So I agree with your assessment.
Yeah, the food noise almost only exists for me now in an airport or on a plane, and I have anxiety at airports and on
Hmm.
planes, and then I have anxiety mixed with boredom, and it's like a magical window for when I would overeat. Right now in my real life, I've got a structure where I just am not compelled to overeat, and I'm chilled out and I'm not stressed out, and like the food noise doesn't exist.
That's amazing.
The
That's a good
airport,
place to be.
yeah, and the mitigation for that is I bring my own food, and
Yeah.
I don't eat other shit when I'm at
A
when I'm
strategy.
at yeah, I have a good strategy that seems to
That's a good
work.
strategy.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy.
And then every now and again I am unable to, like, on the second half of the trip, like coming back when I've been in a hotel for a week and haven't had access to a grocery store and have been working at night, and like I'm getting on a plane and I'm going, oh fuck, I didn't bring food. Then I just go, okay, today's a wash.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
And you're not thinking I need to basically starve myself the next day. You just get, so that's one of the cycles people get on. Oh, I was bad today. Now I'm going to restrict the next day, and then they go through this thing. So it's really good that you have this mindset to where it's like, it's okay. It's one day, one meal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'll get back to it the next day. That's strong because some people, I'd say most people struggle with that
Yeah. No, I did
component.
for forever. No, yeah. If I have a structure that works, the minute that structure fails or I'm unable to uphold it, then everything goes out the window. But that's a losing game for me too. So I'm okay with fucking up for a day. I don't go out of my way to make it the worst day ever. I don't get home after a day like that and order a pizza, which I might have used to have done because tomorrow I'm getting back on the horse.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I allow it to be what it is. I try not to overeat, but I'm not withholding anything. And then I get home and then I'm back into my structure. And that,
That's some strong work. That's some
yeah,
strong
it
work right
works.
there.
It took a long time to get to here, but I feel chilled out about it.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
wish everybody could do that because that would be a game changer in itself.
totally. Totally. Dr. Nadolsky, this has been awesome. You're awesome. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for Weight Watchers. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Anytime, I'll be back as your co-host.
I can't wait for the next one. See you
All
later.
right, see ya.